I'm going to be talking about my research on the topic of secure computation. And before I begin, I just want to say thank you for letting me do this over Zoom. I know we're all tired of online talks, but I hope it's worth it. So first, I'll say a couple words about myself. I did my PhD at Boston University, where I was studying with Professor Leo Raisin. And while I was there, I visited Aarhus. And the plan was for me to only spend a couple of months in Denmark. But thanks to the amazing research group here, I loved it so much that I ended up staying first for a postdoc. And then I got lucky enough to have the chance to stay longer term as an assistant professor. My area of research is cryptography. And I'll tell you why cryptography is awesome first, and then talk about what I do specifically. So 60 years ago, cryptography was all about communicating a secret in the presence of an adversary. So imagine that Alice and Bob share a secret key, which can be thought of kind of like a code. And early cryptography gives Alice the tools that she needs to communicate a private message to Bob, even if the two of them are standing in the middle of a crowded room, surrounded by their enemies. So Alice would use the secret key to encode the message, obtaining something called a ciphertext. And then Bob would use his copy of the secret key to decode the message again. And even though they're not alone in the room, Alice can be sure that an eavesdropper who doesn't know the secret key won't be able to figure out anything about what it was that she said. So since then, cryptography has become much more than that. Modern cryptography has developed many tricks that accomplish the kind of thing that, like, the first time you hear them, sound like they should be completely impossible. So as an example, imagine that Alice and Bob haven't agreed on any sort of secret key ahead of time. So modern cryptography allows Alice and Bob to have a public conversation, as a result of which Alice communicates her secret message to Bob, but nobody else learns what it was that she said to him. Modern cryptography also lets us do things with our secrets other than just hang on to them or send them to someone else. It lets us use our secrets in a public computation without having to reveal the secrets themselves. And this is a very fast-paced area of research because the ways in which we compute are constantly changing. So the ways in which we use cryptography for computation require a lot of innovation in order to keep up. So for a while, we've had cloud computing, which involves hundreds of machines, or I guess we can call them compute nodes, all of which are maintained by a cloud provider, maybe Google. And because Google can invest a lot of resources in this, these compute nodes tend to be very reliable. They're well-built and well-provisioned. As our world is getting more and more decentralized, blockchain is emerging as a paradigm that seems to be here to stay. It was introduced in the context of money, so think Bitcoin, but increasingly it's being used for general computation, so think Ethereum or some of the other blockchains that have popped up recently. So a blockchain can be comprised of millions of compute nodes in a permissionless way. So what this means is that anyone can join. So we don't really know anything about the compute nodes that we end up with. And my research focus has been developing secure computation tools that work in this kind of large-scale, distributed, unpredictable environment. As a motivating example for secure computation, imagine that we have three companies, Company A, Company B, and Company C. And the three of them agree that it's really important to figure out whether there is a citywide gender wage gap problem and to bring it to light if there is one. So they have a very noble purpose. but none of them are willing to tell one another exactly how much they pay their own employees, because this could end up in really bad PR. So if they had a mutual friend or organization who they all trust, then they could each tell that friend how much they pay their own employees. That friend could take the average and publish the results. And in this case, unfortunately, it turns out that women get paid 10% less. But what happens when the three of them can't agree on any one friend who they all trust with their sensitive data? And this is where secure multi-party computation, or MPC for short, comes in. Secure multi-party computation lets our three companies outsource their data to several entities instead of just one, without having to agree on trusting any of these parties. So the three of them send their wage data to the entities they're outsourcing to. And because they don't trust these parties, these compute nodes, they'll encode their wage data in such a way that each message on its own looks like total gibberish. But when taken together, these encode wage data. So having received these messages, our compute nodes can have a conversation which also looks like total gibberish, until, as a result of that computation, everybody learns the output, which is that women get paid 10% less. So this is the first guarantee of secure multi-party computation. It's that as a result of the computation, we all get the output that we wanted to compute. The other guarantee is that in the course of this computation, the privacy of this sensitive input, this wage data, is maintained. None of the compute nodes will learn anything about the wage data other than what's revealed by the output. And this should hold even if our three companies were right not to trust these guys, and some of them are in fact controlled by an adversary. And this adversary might be something like a media company that wants to write an expose about how little money company B is paying its female employees, for instance. So even if that happens, secure multi-party computation guarantees that this adversary, who might install malware on maybe up to half of the compute nodes, won't learn anything that she shouldn't. So notice that we haven't eliminated trust completely. So A, B, and C might not have to trust any one person entirely, but they do still have to trust that half of the compute nodes they've outsourced to are honest. But this is a much weaker requirement than agreeing on one entity all of them trust. So I presented this as a sort of cute, motivating example, but this wage gap computation is something that was actually done in Boston, where I'm from. And secure computation has also been used for other important computations on sensitive data, like analytics on patient medical records, which need to be computed in order to inform further medical research. So our next question is, where do these companies find the servers? So of course they could run the servers themselves and maybe ask some of their friends to pitch in, but they might not want to commit the time or resources, especially if we're talking about individuals and not companies. They could turn to cloud providers, but there aren't that many cloud providers out there. And it could be that Alice has a distrust of big corporations and doesn't believe that most of these big cloud providers are in fact honest. So instead, they could turn to the blockchain, which, as we mentioned earlier, consists of millions of nodes. But we don't necessarily know anything about these nodes. They could be any kind of entity or machine. So most secure computation protocols can't handle this kind of setting because NPC requires every pair of participants to talk to one another. And maybe when we have hundreds, everyone talking to everyone might be feasible. But when we try to scale this to millions, it becomes prohibitively inefficient to require every node to talk to every other node. And this is where my recent research comes in. So back in 2021, together with my collaborators in Aarhus and at the Algorithm Foundation, we introduced YOSO Secure Computation. And YOSO stands for You Only Speak Once, and this name will become clearer in just a minute. So again, the problem we're trying to solve is that on a blockchain, we have too many parties for all of them to realistically talk to each other. So one natural solution is, let's restrict this computation to involve only a subset of our nodes. As soon as we've done that, though, we've made the adversary's job much easier. Because remember that we have to assume that the adversary can install malware on maybe half of our machines, half of our compute nodes. So now that so few of the compute nodes are actually involved, this adversary, this media company, can go ahead and corrupt almost all of them. And if that happens, we lose all of our guarantees. So we can't guarantee anymore that our company's secret wage data remains private. And we also can't guarantee that our output will be correct. And in fact, by maybe taking the corrupt compute nodes offline, our adversary could just stop the computation in its tracks. So a solution to that is we can say, well, if the adversary knows who the relevant compute nodes are, she can take them offline. But let's try to keep this relevant subset of compute nodes anonymous. If she doesn't know who they are, the adversary can't target them. So the problem with that is, especially in a distributed setting like the blockchain, we have to assume that the adversary is kind of watching our communication network, and she'll see who's talking. And as soon as our relevant compute nodes start trying to talk to one another, the adversary will be able to de-anonymize them, and again, she'll be able to target them. And here's where YOSO really comes in. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that each node, each compute node who's part of this computation, speaks exactly once. And if she speaks exactly once, and she then becomes irrelevant to the computation, there's no real incentive for the adversary to target her anymore. So this is great, but now we have yet another problem. This problem is going to be that if every node speaks exactly once and then becomes irrelevant, how are we going to maintain the secret states? And remember, this computation involves secrets, which have been sort of outsourced to our blockchain by the companies who own those secrets. If everyone goes offline as soon as they've done anything, the secrets will be lost. So what we're going to do is we're going to have every subset who says anything within the same breath in which they sent their one message, they're going to transfer their secret state to the next subset of relevant parties. And now our next problem is going to be that, well, if they want to transfer their secret states to the next set of relevant compute nodes, they're going to have a lot of trouble doing this without knowing who they're transferring the secret state to. And we can't tell them who they're transferring the secret state to. because the next parties need to remain anonymous until they themselves speak. So we're going to, instead of having our compute nodes talk one directly to another, we're going to have them broadcast that one message that they sent. And we are going to distribute secret keys to the next subset in such a way that just that subset is going to be able to use those keys to extract meaning from the broadcast message. But to everyone else, it's going to look like gibberish. And this is how YOSO secure computation works in a nutshell. And if you've lost me a bit on this slide, I'll just sort of reiterate what we've accomplished here. So what our companies do is they speak once. They somehow delegate their secrets to the blockchain, or on this slide, to a room full of rubber ducks. And from this room full of rubber ducks, unpredictably, a couple ducks are going to quack. Or in our blockchain, a couple nodes are going to speak. And as a result of this, we're going to get the correct output of the computation while maintaining the privacy of our inputs, even if up to half of these rubber ducks, or half of these blockchain nodes, have malware installed on them. All right, so since the introduction of this YOSO-style secure computation, which is massively scalable, it's been improved in several ways. So, for instance, one thing I haven't talked about is how we give this unpredictable, anonymous set of compute nodes these gray secret keys. And a bunch of recent work has tried to make this more reliable and more efficient. So other recent works have focused on improving the way we run the actual computation on top of the keys that we've distributed. So we want to require fewer rounds of communication, and we want to do this using more efficient tools. Recently, Acharya, Hazai, Kolesnikov, and Prabhakaran have had this other idea, which is leveraging the owners of the secret data themselves. So, of course, we can't ask these data owners to run the computation, because for them, the whole point has been to outsource the computation and do less work. But maybe we can use the fact that these data owners, or clients, as we can call them, can speak more than once in order to sort of aid our computation and make it more efficient. And the original construction of Acharya, Hazai, Kolesnikov, and Prabhakaran, it's really elegant, but it's very fragile too. So it really relies on the fact that all of our compute nodes follow the instructions. They do everything they're supposed to do. And as soon as that's not the case, the computation breaks. So an important direction is to make this kind of computation more resilient. And all three of these directions are things that me and my collaborators are very excited to be working on now. And hopefully we'll have more exciting results soon. And that's actually all I have to say. So thank you everyone for listening to yet another online talk. I'm happy to take any questions.